All right, y'all. I'm gonna give some folks an extra. We had about 50 people sign up, so I'm gonna give everyone a little time to join. Well, I want to introduce myself, um, share a little bit about my background to give you some insight into why maybe I have something valuable to offer, um, and then we can dive into this presentation. It's about 30 slides. I'm gonna go through it really quickly, and we'll try to save some time for Q&A at the end. In the meantime, though, any questions that you have, please put them in the chat. My colleague Lizzie is going to be moderating the chat and just surfacing some of those to me. If I can't get to them by the end of the presentation because this thing is so packed, I will follow up over email afterwards and welcome any thoughts and ideas throughout the presentation. So I'm Nick. I'm a partner at Further Faster. We're a lean venture studio. I'm also a founder. I've been in tech for like, I don't know, 10 years or so. Came from a design background, and a lot of the things that I use in my entrepreneurship career have been through a design lens. About 8 years ago, I raised a little bit of money with some other founders to do an app builder, and the app builder didn't work so well. We pivoted 4 times, ended up with a great product called Mode Mobile that incentivizes consumers to listen to music and rewards them for their attention and time. But over the course of those 4 pivots, I learned a lot about product market fit, how quickly to find it, when you should walk away from something, when you should reinvest. And I've synthesized a lot of that along with my 2 partners at Further Faster into a kind of a program that we run our founders through. It takes anywhere from a couple of months to 9 months, depending on how much work is needed. But we bring startups from pre-seed through Series A. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and dive in and start my screen share. Just to make sure everybody can see my screen. All right, everybody can see my screen, okay? Super. Okay, so we're here to talk about building a product market fit engine. I think a lot of people think and have a misconception around product market fit that it only happens once and then you just ride that wave for the rest of your company's life cycle, and that's actually not the case. Markets change and shift. Your customers want more from you, so you need to release new features. So staying on the pulse of what your users and customers need is vital, and it should basically fall in and service everything else in your, I need to make sure I'm recording. Oh, we are recording, okay. Everything else in your company feeds off the studies and the work that we're doing and listening to your customer. Your hiring, your fundraising, which I can talk a little bit about maybe at the end, and especially development. So if we're tech founders here in this group, I think the biggest mistake I've seen over the last decade is people just start developing right away to get something out in the world. And we're lucky as entrepreneurs now that there's so much we can do with low code and no code tools and just design tools to get feedback that's really valuable. And so that's what I'll be talking about today. A little bit of the high level, and then I'll go into real specific tactical stuff that you can employ and the user research that you all perform. Sam Altman is the president of Y Combinator, former president of Y Combinator, the most well-known of all the acceleration incubators. And he says that the #1 predictor of success is the rate of iteration. And I've got a fun graph on this a little bit later from Adam Grant. But a lot of smart folks who have been around the block know that iterating fast is key. But this product market fit mindset, or this product market fit process, starts with your mindset. Here are the top 3 things that I think contribute to successful product market fit from founders. It isn't just your methodology and process, it's the way that you approach things. So a genuine interest in the problem is key. A lot of folks will go out, especially in B2B, and start selling right away. Before you start selling, you have to be in the position of learning first. So fall in love with your customers' problems, ask them about their lives before, during, and after this moment of where they're interacting with this problem, and really become and remain curious. That leads into the deep listening. Once you start learning, You have to really find this point of impact where the pain really matters and is inconveniencing them so much so that they're either already paying for something or they're putting a lot of energy into trying to fix their own problem. We use a process of measuring the pain point based on its severity on a vertical axis and its point in the life cycle or the journey, the sales journey. So we usually start with the highest pain point soonest in the journey. That's something that I'm happy to share a template if you'd like. It saves a lot of time. The third is iterating. I've already mentioned that a million times and I will continue to, but this is a cycle, not something that just happens once. You'll know when you hit product market fit. I think a lot of people will say, I think I've found product market fit, or we've kind of found product market fit, but you'll know. It's a feeling. Customers can't get enough of what you're selling. Customers are spontaneously telling others about it. And, if they're not just evangelizing and sharing, they're teaching their friends and family members and colleagues how to use your product. That's the best. And you're hiring as fast as you can. You just can't keep up. So those are three for sure signs that you're finding or have found product market fit. Like I was saying, there's a big misconception around this process, that it just happens here at the beginning when you're building and you test and then you scale and then we're all millionaires and you're making a lot of impact in the world. But in fact, this thing needs to happen on a quarterly basis at least, in my opinion. And you'll see this quick cycle over here, converting things into assumptions, defining that hypothesis, designing and testing your prototype, and continuing the cycle, right? Things that come out of those tests feed into the next test. This is a quick outline of how we'll be going through the rest of the presentation. I'll talk a little bit in a second about converting assumptions into hypotheses, how to take those hypotheses and design a test, and then how to run that test and get some results. So Adam Grant, great writer, fun writer of mine, or favorite writer of mine, talks about scientific thinking in startups. And you can see here in the graph that those who do scientific thinking or incorporate scientific thinking pivot more and have exponential returns on that time. And so we found that to be true ourselves, but I always think graphs from third parties help make things more convincing. Okay, here's our first exercise. I'd love for you all to choose your home for lists, whether you're using Asana or Trello or Jira or just your notes app or Notion. That's a big favorite. Go ahead and take out that list platform and create a new note or a new list. And we're going to call that assumptions. I just want to take 1 minute here, and I'd love for you to share the answers to this in the chat in a second. But I'd love for all of us to just write down one of the assumptions that is most critical for us to get right and to learn about in order for us to achieve success. So as you're thinking about yours, I'm going to share mine. We're looking to help family offices create their own venture studios to solve problems that matter most to them. One of my biggest assumptions is that next-gen family office leaders are the folks that are going to be most likely to adopt this kind of mindset. And so once I understand that that's my keystone assumption, I can then create a whole research plan around that. And so I'd love for you all to just quickly share. I'm going to take a look in chat. What are some of the keystone assumptions that you all are holding right now in your businesses? I'm just going to take a second for you to reply. Alec, you're one of the only folks that's responded in the chat so far. I hear you're working on Cadre, an all-in-one coaching and live streaming health and wellness app. What would be one of the keystone assumptions for you? Perhaps that someone who is interested in health or wellness also has time to live stream, or live streaming is convenient for that person, right? That's a keystone assumption for your product. Are there others that some folks have, or maybe Alec, you want to correct me on that keystone assumption? Well, I won't belabor it too much, but the best thing to do is to set up a system for yourself. Oh, here's Chad. Thanks, Chad. Coding is boring or hard. Yes, I can attest. Some people love it. And so hold that in your mind, right? That's your keystone assumption. And as we think about that for the rest of the presentation today, we'll start to develop a research methodology around how to validate or invalidate that coding is hard and boring for some folks. This list that I've just kind of encouraged you all, however successfully, to create is part of this system of alarm bells for you to fight your ego, okay? One of the biggest blessings that we have as founders is that we're borderline delusional or we're full on delusional, right? We think that we have this vision and people can follow us and towards that vision, and collectively we can all achieve it, right? Ego is necessary for that, but it's also our worst enemy. And when we're building products and spending money, we need to set up a system to kind of keep our ego in check, especially male founders. I think this is a bigger issue with men than it is with women, I've found. And so what we can do is continuously list assumptions ourselves on a regular basis, on a Friday night, whenever you think it's convenient, but always go back to that list when you're thinking to yourself, what should I be testing next? During conversations with your team, assumptions are going to come up. Develop the muscle to say, hey, is that an assumption? This is one of the most critical things in building your culture early on as a founder. I know it's hard to set up to convert an assumption into a hypothesis. Identifying the assumption can kind of be hard. So I've created little Mad Libs here. It's not perfect. You can adjust it as you'd like, but there are 3 things that are important to include in your hypothesis statement. An assumption that we just talked about, a persona, the person that affects, and the business impact, okay? So here's a little example for a telemedicine company. We believe that certain medical appointments and consults for people who can't leave their house will result in more telemedicine usage on our app. So the assumption here is that there are certain medical appointments and consults that require telemedicine. And now we have to go out and figure out, what are those? What is the leading, most prevalent consult or appointment rationale or motivation that can be done over telemedicine, right? So we went from an assumption to a hypothesis to a focused area of research. I know I'm moving quick, but these are all helpful. Like I mentioned, a lot of folks don't know which assumption to start with. Let's say you have a list of 10. Kudos for you for making a list of 10 assumptions. The keystone assumption is the one that if you don't get that right, the rest of the business doesn't really matter. There's usually 2 or 3 of these in any business model. I'm happy to help you identify that if you'd like. Okay, so here are the ways. Once you've identified your hypothesis and you want to go out and test it, here's some ways of going and gathering that data. There are 2 types of data gathering. There's primary research and secondary research. This list here is for primary research. We can do this in a couple of different ways: qualitative or quantitative surveys, ethnographic interviews, and the last is synthesizing. It's not really another method, but it's so important I needed to call it out. A lot of folks will go through the user survey process and interview their customers, but they won't properly spend the time. It takes a couple of hours to synthesize and document that information. It's not only important for you and the future you who's making decisions and wondering why the hell you made this decision in the first place, it's also super important for your teammates. Anyone who's coming on board after this is going to also wonder if they're worth their weight. It's going to wonder why we're building this thing, what made us go in this direction, and having data is the most convincing way of doing that. Okay. Just want to dive a little deeper into why it's so important for data, right? For a pre-revenue, pre-user product, right? Pre-seed stuff. That's the world that I live in most, is pre-seed and seed. We don't have users. We don't have a ton of them, at least. A lot of times we're not generating revenue yet. Or if we are, it's not significant. And so the data that we collect from our user research needs to be convincing. It needs to be instilling a sense of confidence in your investor. because you don't have the regular data for them to do diligence on. So data's king, not only in fundraising and in hiring, but in also for number two here, instilling a culture of learning. So you're technically building a company that we all hope will build and grow far more than just 1 or 2 or 10, maybe even 50, 100 people are going to be working at this company that you're starting. Starting to map your culture right now is vital to that, so that you can build a culture that you're proud of. And one of the things that I would recommend as someone who's led teams of 20 to 50, I would say data is one of the best things that you can use to remove bottlenecking. If you're the type of CEO that really loves to be involved in everything, that can grow to become quite a hindrance in your pace. And that's really the only advantage that we have as startups, is a fast moving rocket, right? Like we're supposed to be moving faster than all of the giant companies that have all of the money can, right? So speed is critical. And if you're bottlenecking decisions or strategies based on your own opinion versus data, you're going to slow down your company. So if you create a culture where data speaks first, then you'll be moving a lot faster. You'll decentralize decision making into different departments within your company and different leaders in your company. And the third is that now is the best time to test. Okay, 5 years from now, a few months from now, after you've already spent a ton of money in development or created something, you're bogged down by debt. Technical debt, financial debt, I don't know. But there's so many things that are going to force you to go and try to squeeze the life out of the thing that you already made. And that at that point, it's too late. We want to start now because it's lean, it's fast, it's low risk. You haven't invested very much. So the first thing I can say is start testing as soon as possible, as early as you can in your company. Okay. I'm curious. I hope this doesn't fall on deaf ears again. But I'm curious, guys, of these 6 exercises, which have you done? Just shout them out in the channel, in the chat. Number 1, number 2, number 5, whichever one you've done. I'm curious how many of you have actually done some of these data gathering tactics. So we've got 6 here. Surveys, great for qualitative stuff. Thanks, Benjamin. Interviews of our customers. We can do those in different ways. I'll get into that in a sec. Subject matter expert interviews. This is one of my favorites. SME interviews, number 3. We always prioritize doing subject matter expert interviews early on because we learn from the mistakes they've already made, potentially as entrepreneurs. But it's also an opportunity for us to court advisory board members or potential angel investors. Okay, this is a little hack. If you're having trouble raising your angel round or your pre-seed round, the people who have experience in your problem are most likely to understand. And if they've been successful in their career, they'll cut you a 20K, 50K check or something, right? So SME interviews are good for more than just learning. They're good for courting advisors and potential investors. For marketing competitive analysis, most folks do this. I'll get into some advice, some pieces of advice on how we can do that better. Landing pages, super popular, and prototypes and mockups. Okay. Thank you so much for responding. The chat is lighting up. It seems like interviews are actually pretty popular. And so I'm hoping I'll be able to, hey, Charlotte. I'm hoping I'll be able to shed some light on a couple of different methods on how to make those interviews a little bit more effective and faster, because I know they can take a little while. All right, but first I'm going to start with surveys. Okay. Designing a survey is not the hardest, but I would say most people don't spend enough time on it. The way you frame your questions, the way you set expectations before, during, and after the interview, keeping it short and focused, simplifying your language, right? We're removing all the jargon that might come naturally to you as an industry leader. Only asking one question at a time instead of the, hey, how do you feel about this? And does it make you feel great, right? That's a leading question and it's a double. So got to just do one question at a time. And then also using Likert scales is helpful. I just actually went through a survey with someone who had about 15 Likert scale questions all in a row. And at a certain point, they can become kind of dizzying. So variation, I know there's not a number 7, but I want to throw in a 7 here. variation in the questions is also super helpful. If you're using a tool that allows you to randomize the order of the questions, that's even better because it'll reduce a certain amount of bias that can occur as someone's going through a 10 to 15 question interview. Okay, I did have 7, but it's a different 7. So incentives are really helpful. I always usually go out in the world without incentives at first. And if we have a lackluster response, I'll bring the incentive in. And that's just because I'm budget conscious as a founder myself. Depending on the person's skill, what they might make on an hourly basis, you can incentivize them between anywhere like a $50 gift card up to $250 cash. At the end, you'll definitely want to get some contact information so you can follow up with them, because ultimately you want to be making these folks into interviews. That brings me to interviews. All right. The number one thing that will delay your interviews is finding the right participants. This can take between 1 and 2 weeks, sometimes even more. Where you want to start in defining the person that is best actually starts here at number 9, a screener question. When you reach out and you create this survey and it's like more of a spray and pray model, right? Hopefully you can get some folks that are really focused and you feel like would represent your core customer segment. You want to put in a few questions and mark them ahead of time, kind of in your mind. Okay, question number 7, option B is probably someone who I want to talk to. And question number 11, option A, or like a long form response that mentions telemedicine appointments. That's someone who I want to talk to. So thinking about what questions you're putting down and how they'll qualify you for user interviews later is critical. Before you even do that, I'd say before even the survey, you want to make sure you have that clear persona. Great places to source these are forums, groups, and associations. Weeks, maybe even months ahead of time, you'll want to be joining, like, I'm raising money for a VR company right now, and I just recently joined like 10 Facebook groups, Telegram groups, Twitter thread. Like, I just went out and got involved because I know very soon I'm going to be needing to talk to those people in depth. And so getting involved in these groups ahead of time makes it feel a little bit more authentic, and you can get to know the moderators so that they favor your request when you ask for folks to take your survey. One of the other things we do most for B2C companies is putting out an advertisement. So throwing out an advertisement is super helpful in 2 ways. One, it will test your messaging immediately. It's super fast. I would recommend doing at least 3 campaigns at once, each with a different message. Same image. You don't want to vary too much what's going on in your ad, but do some messaging testing. And folks that click on the message that resonates with them, let's say you have 50% go all to this one of the 3 ads, you know that marketing language is actually hitting, or some version of it. And that those people are, and this is the second reason, they've opted in to your call to action, right? So these are already slightly qualified users, which makes them really great interview candidates. And then timing, you just want to find the right group and send out the message to those folks at the right time. Okay, I've got about 4 or 5 slides on interviewing because we think it's so important here at Further Faster. I'm going to go deep but fast, and I'll send out this deck afterwards. You all have it for reference. Ahead of the interview, you'll look at your advertising emails. And hopefully, in the funnel you've created for your advertisement, you have some sort of qualification question, or you've looked now at your survey responses. First thing you have to do is qualify these respondents to make sure that you're talking to the right folks. I would recommend reaching out to at least 10 people to account for cancellations, no-shows, etc. So you at least end up with like 6 or 7. That's the sweet spot with interviews. There's been some tests in UX research by Nielsen Norman Group that says the amount that you're learning really plateaus after 6. So you'll learn like 80% of your information in 6 interviews and 20% from 6 to 20, right? So if as founders, it's super important that we're time efficient with everything we do. So I recommend 6 or 7 interviews because the results wane after time. Designate some time blocks in an orderly way. Block out your calendar, make a Calendly. You'll see that that's down here, number 6, the tools that we like to use. Draft an invitation email ahead of time, letting them know, setting expectations that you'll be recording the interview, that the interview will only be used internally, that the incentive will be released a week or so after the interview in the form of a gift card, whatever it is. Just make them feel prepared ahead of time. You don't want to just like send them a link, they've never heard from you, and now you're on a call asking them super personal questions, right? Like, imagine that this was almost as a sales process where you want to be granular in your approach and really be sympathetic. Okay, write a script. If nothing on this page, leave with that. Number 4, most important. And it comes with a caveat. Sectioning off your interview into 3 or 4 sections, before the journey, the moment of the problem, right after, a month after, something, whatever the sections might be. Creating an outline is super helpful. And then having questions within each of those sections is also super helpful. It's helpful for you in the digestion component here. So if you are asking a different question on every interview, how are you supposed to get consistent responses and say 6 out of 10 people that I interviewed responded in this way or answered this question? So consistency between interviews is critical. The caveat is, as you're going through these interviews, the interviewee might go off on a tangent or might find an interesting place to go. And that's okay. You want to let them do that to a certain degree, because that's where they're naturally going. And that's where you're learning, right? Excuse me. But at certain times, you need to refocus them and make sure you get through like at least the core questions that are most important to you on your interview script. And you're paying them for their time. So you can definitely say things like, hey, let me steer you back towards this question or this part of the journey. Document those responses either through transcription on Rev or Zoom, and make sure that you're synthesizing those in an orderly way. I like to use a spreadsheet. We also use a whiteboarding tool. I can totally recommend FigJam or Miro, and just writing down all the insights on Post-it notes within those virtual whiteboarding tools, and then organizing them and clustering them based on themes afterwards. More on that process later. Okay, writing the script. I'm going to skip this and let you review this one at the end because I think we're running out of time a little bit. Right after, So keep the questions short, build trust. Don't lead, follow. Okay, now we're actually conducting the interview. Great job. You wrote your script, you recruited qualified folks. Now's game time. Ahead of the interview, you want to do a quick tech check. You don't want anything to disrupt the atmosphere as you're bringing this person through a really thoughtful exercise. We recommend using two researchers only. I think founders will oftentimes like to be a part of this research, and they can if they have self-restraint and don't turn into a salesperson. But one person conducting the interview and the other person kind of facilitating note-taking and capturing core insights, super helpful. Being consistent with those questions, like I mentioned before, really helps when you're synthesizing. Focusing on the current context. And what I mean by that is at every stage of this interview, you're going to be following their journey. We use a process called jobs to be done, or a framework called jobs to be done. And it follows the customer through the life cycle of their pain point. So before, during, after. And you really want to be diving into each one of those contextual moments, because you'll notice in the before section, there's a lot of great touch points for you to reach out to them and market to them and capture their attention. And then afterwards, there's great ways for you to maybe create opportunities for virality or for sharing and evangelism. Okay, you've just completed the interview. Great job. Right away, immediately after the interview, plot your insights. We use another, part of the framework for jobs to be done is what's called the forces diagram. I don't have it here in the presentation, but if you quickly just Google in your browser JTBD forces diagram, you'll see a great little quadrant diagram: pushes, pulls, actions, and anxieties, or habits and anxieties. And a litmus test for product market fit here is if you have more pulls than you do anxieties. So if you have 30 anxieties and 2 pulls, I'm going to say that you're going to have a ton of friction out there in the marketplace to get people to use and adopt your product. But if you have 30 pulls and 5 or 10 anxieties, you're in pretty good shape. It's not too scientific, but it's a cool little litmus test that I like to use. After you've synthesized it in this quadrant, we like to then take the pushes and the pulls and try to do an affinity map and find where they overlap. The areas where you're overlapping pushes and pulls are also areas where there's potential product market fit. I'll go into that more maybe during a personal conversation. Didn't bring the template today. Transcribe, I've already got that. Documentation's key. And scheduling an internal synthesis with the rest of your team so you can share out what you've learned. You don't want to be the only person as the interviewer holding this information, right? Everybody needs to know what you know so that we can all make decisions, right? This goes back to that decentralized decision-making framework that I'm a big fan of. The subject matter expert interviews. Right after you've done customer interviews, you've got some insights, you've got some hypotheses that are developing. Maybe you want to run them by some folks that know more than you do in different ways, right? These can be academics who are thinking about the future of this industry, or they're industry veterans who have seen this industry evolve over the last 10, 20 years. All of them have a lot of value for you, and interviewing them is critical. They can also be great advisors or potential investors, as I mentioned before. All right, now we're diving into secondary research. We've just gone through some best practices for primary research. Secondary research, I've got 5 here. So doing a quick market size, growth, and trends analysis is really helpful. You can find that information in different places. You'll often find that information conflicts. Even the VCs and the people you're hiring in the future understand that no market size data is comprehensive and completely accurate, but you need to choose the one that's defensible. Okay, like that's key word in this whole entire process is defensible. We're all likely to be proven wrong. Things can change. It's not about being right or wrong. It's about how defensible your rationale is in this approach. Having a list of direct and indirect competitors, and then skipping down to number 5, figuring out the competitive matrices with those folks is super important. A lot of folks will just focus on features, like they can do this and they can do this, and then they'll march towards feature parity when you don't even know if those companies are really succeeding. I really try to question and be critical of feature parity and just analyzing a competitive advantage just based on features. There's also brand, and brand has become much more, a much more important part of a company's DNA because it's included in it, or it is involved in the company's formation, its growth, its internal operations, as well as how it's being perceived outside of the company. So thinking about your competitor's brand as well is super helpful. Going through the startup graveyard, there's a great website called Startup Graveyard or something like that. And it goes through all of the companies that have failed in all sorts of verticals. So I would recommend going to Startup Graveyard, reaching out to that founder on LinkedIn, asking them like what went wrong, what were some great wins, do you know some folks? Maybe they have an angel who's like really excited about that idea and didn't get to exercise their passion or their excitement through that company and want to back another company. So that goes into funding and acquisitions. Charting the path of capital is helpful. If a competitor of yours just got an injection of $30 million and you're a first-time founder who is having difficulty raising, $300K, you need to be honest with yourself and be like, okay, should I just go and work for this company Should I build this company to a certain small revenue amount and get acquired by this company? Or should I just say, fuck it, I'm gonna go for gold and try to beat this player? Not knowing what's going on in the market, though, just makes you blind. And having a strategy to deal with each of these things is super important, not only for yourself, but for your investor narrative as well. Linda, which URL were you referring to? I forgot. I think I mentioned a few different URLs. I'm uncertain. What was it related to? I'll try to get it in the chat as soon as I can. All right, so now we're closer towards the end of our time here. We're just talking about prototyping and testing now. Another big misconception I find is that people will try to create an MVP or a prototype that looks and acts very similar to their end product. And in my opinion, having a sliver of each thing is really helpful. It doesn't need to be functional. It doesn't need to be reliable. It barely needs to be usable or convenient or any of the other things that are higher on this pyramid. A proper prototype is actually over here. It's usable, convenient, pleasurable, and meaningful, okay? It's not reliable or functional. And this is where developers' brains blow up, because their first instinct is what they're best at, which is coding and making something that works. But what I'm saying here is design is your best friend. You can understand the feedback loop, the impressions, the habits, anxieties, the purchasing behavior around a product without it having working at all. As long as it's usable, convenient, pleasurable, and meaningful in a slight little bit. Another misconception that I find in prototyping is, let's say I'm making a restaurant recommendation app, okay? And what I'm looking to understand is how people get recommendations for restaurants that they go to. And early on in our research, we learned that people love their restaurant recommendations from friends and people that know them. I'm not going to go and then make an app that looks like a restaurant recommendation guide that has fake friends on there that they don't know, and then put that prototype in front of someone, because that elicits zero emotional response. Instead, I'm going to create a WhatsApp thread or a Telegram thread. I'm going to be an interloper on there, and I'm going to ask one of my participants to invite 6 of their friends and ask for a restaurant recommendation, so I can observe what goes on. And what I might learn is that there's a debate that goes on. One friend recommends this pizza place, and the other one says, no, this one's better. And another one says, oh, I actually made that pizza at home, and it turns into a recipe app. That's optimizing for learning. The latter, right, is just almost a masturbatory kind of exercise to see if you can make something that feels real. You're not trying to optimize for the reaction. And I think that's one of the more conventional mistakes that folks make. Okay, so now we've gone through a prototype. We've gone through the interviews, we've gone through the interviews first, then we've gone through a prototype. Now we're putting the prototype in front of folks in the form of an interview and gotten some feedback. We're like, okay, so let's say for this restaurant recommendation app, the most important thing, the most important feature set is it's a messaging bot inside Facebook, and it just basically catalogs your recommendations passively from friends. What you want to do is try to prioritize these features now, because you're now making a Facebook bot, or trying to understand what other messaging platforms bots can live on, and how you're indexing those recommendations, all this stuff, right? So as soon as you've gotten focus, everything kind of blows up again. And this is a really great way of prioritizing your features. This is an effort and impact quadrant. And it's a little counterintuitive, but the best place to start is the place with the highest impact and the lowest effort. So you can get those things done, build a little bit of momentum, start your learning process, and then move into high impact, high effort stuff. Those will take a while, right? Because they're high effort. And so let's say it's been 2 or 3 weeks since you've done all of these tasks, you've done maybe 2 sprints. It's been 6 weeks. At that point, you want to kind of reorient this. You never want to get down to high effort, low impact, or low effort, low impact. Those are the least effective things for you to be spending time on as a founder. They're not going to be moving you forward. Sometimes there might be a little exception, but this is a really great litmus test for prioritizing features in a fast and effective way. Okay, so here's the summary. It seems like we might actually have some time for some Q&A, but I don't know if I can hear you. So just to review, we want to set up a system of alarm bells that convert our assumptions into hypotheses, right? We want to call ourselves out. We want to call our teammates out and say, hey, is that an assumption? Maybe we should test that. Make a list of those things that are that you want to test. Choose the most important ones, the things that are going to debilitate your company over the long term. Turn those into hypotheses, right? That's the first step in getting into a scientific mindset. Once you've got them into a hypothesis, you can figure out where to focus and create a research plan so you can design and test that hypothesis. You'll see my little diagram around how you want to start really small and then optimize for reactions. And once you've done that and you're kind of leaving this cycle for a brief moment, you're going to go ahead and prioritize those features based on their effort and impact. Okay, I know this is super long and fast, but I'm curious what you all have. Yes, Q&A is open. What have you all learned what have you taken away from this session? And do you have any questions that I can answer in our remaining few minutes? Linda, I'm going to send you the URL directly because I can't remember which thing I'm talking about right now. Search for your, oh, okay, yeah. So search forces diagram. It's the jobs to be done framework. And if y'all are feeling, yes, if y'all are feeling nerdy and want to get into the science and the methods behind a lot of this work, jobs to be done is a really big framework that we take inspiration from. We also use the Google Ventures Design Sprint. And there's a great book by John Zaratsky and Jake Knapp called Sprint. And then we also use the hooked model from Mir Ayal. And a few more that I'm happy to share. So great question, Felicia. Felicia's asking, how can we quantify when we've achieved product market fit? This, I think, starts with a key performance indicator. Are we all familiar with KPIs? Another thing maybe to look into. But early on in your product development, you want to choose a key performance indicator. So for a product we're all familiar with, Twitter, the key performance indicator for Twitter very early on was following 5 people. Those that followed 5 people were more likely to be on the platform for a year or more, something like that. So for your product, Felicia, do you have an understanding of maybe what your KPI is? What is the thing that indicates success in your product? Because that's how I would measure product market fit, is that KPI has increased over time. And if I go back to the beginning of the presentation, you'll be able to see like revenues are going up, user numbers are going up, you know, press is coming your way. You're creating a little bit of momentum. And you can create a lot of those things yourself. It's not just stuff that happens on its own. Did that answer the question all right? What other questions can I answer before we wrap up here? And if you can, just do a quick snap on this this QR code and give me some feedback. It's really helpful for me. I give this presentation all the time, and you're a great crowd. So I'm sure your feedback will be really helpful for me in perfecting this. What other questions might we all have? I know we still got 29 folks and a few more minutes. I think I went too fast. What's the fastest I've achieved product market fit? I don't know. I wouldn't say any faster than a few months, like 4 or 5 months it takes. You'll get indicators early on. Like let's say you get that survey out in your first week or two. You'll start getting feedback that says like good things, right? Like you're interpreting it as the founder, you're like, ooh, there's a response that means we might have something here, right? So the inklings of product market fit can happen really fast, but being certain that you've achieved it won't happen for months because you need to build that momentum. You need to get the results of your work. And oftentimes you'll need a prototype or a proof of concept or something that people are using and signing up for. The product that I'm building right now, which is like a memory platform, we're about to launch some social media ads that drive traffic to a website that collects, kind of pre-release signups. And we're using that momentum of how quickly we can get those signups as an indicator of product market fit for our fundraise. We're raising about $1 million. And if I can tell someone that we got 5,000 people to sign up for this thing in 2 weeks, that shows a little bit of momentum. I'm not saying it's product market fit, but it serves a similar purpose. Does that answer the question, Scott? Thanks, Jesse. Yeah, scientific thinking. It's not just for scientists. Yes, tongue. Don't find users for your solution, find solutions for your users. I 100% agree with that. One of the pitfalls that we fall into as founders is having this eureka moment, getting super excited about it, getting other people excited about it, and then trying to sell it to people. We don't actually go out and ask people if they have that problem or they want the solution, right? We'll go out and ask them if they want the solution, right? We'll start by selling instead of going out and being curious. And that's why I mentioned early on in this presentation, it's one of the most important things to take away from this is to start with a mindset of curiosity. Yeah, Scott, the sense of urgency that we find or that we feel as founders will never go away. Nothing is ever fast enough. One thing that I've learned that helps me quell or address that sense of urgency is keeping track of my progress. A lot of times we'll do a ton but not recognize it. And then we think about the gap only. And of course, the gap is the most important thing for us to be thinking about. But it creates an imbalanced narrative in our heads as founders. So give yourself some credit for the work you've done already. It'll help you feel like you're not spending your time in vain and that you've done some things. But there's also some tips here, and I'm happy to get on a call at another time to talk about ways that you can move a little bit faster. Like synthesizing interviews takes me an hour now. It used to take me like 5 hours. And these are all just quick tricks of the trade that help with speed, because I know speed and budget are such critical things for us. What are the best ways to drive awareness for a B2C product without being spammy and not using paid ads? Okay. Colin. As a mature business, you can be spammy, and that's bad. But as a founder of a business that hasn't really even come into existence yet, you're not spammy. You're like maybe a little annoying, but I hope you can become comfortable with that because that's kind of necessary. You have to evangelize. You have to go out and get no's. You have to be inconveniencing people, or else you're not going out. You're not doing enough. You know what I mean? So if you're uncomfortable with paid ads, which I totally understand, there are other ways to get volume. Less qualified than with ads because they're not opting into the CTA. B2C is tough because your whole marketing model at the end of it is to get to consumers. So you almost want to start testing those marketing channels as soon as possible. You mind if I ask a follow-up question here, Colin? Why do you not want to use paid ads? And then I'm going to come back to that question after I answer Benjamin's. Okay, so Benjamin's question around product market fit is a little bit around budget. So how much money did we spend in that 4-month cycle? If I was doing all of the work myself, I would say I probably spent $800, definitely less than $1,000 on like the subscription to my, like my survey tool if I wasn't using a free one, but there's tons of free ones. If I was using an ad, I probably spent $200 to $500 on the ad. And then I don't want to synthesize all alone. I want to bring someone in. So maybe I'll incentivize like another founder, friend of mine, buy them a nice bottle of liquor or like pay them an hourly rate or something like that. But spending my money wisely up front to make sure that the insights are strong and getting a second opinion on my methods. So it's not a very expensive process if you're doing it yourself. Okay, Jesse, you have a great question about segmenting between the person using your end product and the person buying your end product. And this is a great question. I'm sure there are more of you on the call who are facing something similar. Treat them both the same. Your buyer is one persona and your end customer is another persona. When we talk about prioritizing these things, I would say go for your buyer first. Your buyer will give you insight into the end customer and the way that they're seeing issues with your end customer, stuff that you might not be able to see yourself. And you'll be able to get their psychological insights and kind of profile. So if it's a B2B to C kind of a play, like you're selling to a business who's then going to sell to a customer, you need a slightly different approach to going out and finding those interviewees. The professional organizations, the trade organizations, networking groups, those are the places where you're going to find the most likely folks that are qualified. It's really hard to do this, though. A lot of forums don't want you to post on them, ask for interviews. Business people just generally get solicited all the time, so they're in this mindset of like, get the fuck out of here. So one of the things that we do, which is a little bit of a gray hat concept, is by posting a job description for the role that you're looking for. So let's say you're looking for an office manager and you're having a ton of difficulty getting in touch with an office manager. Post a job posting online for that position at your company. And after you get a few responses, let them know that that position's been filled, but you have an offer to use their time with an incentive of like $100 or something like that to interview them based on something else. So you're filling the funnel, very qualified leads. People are opting in that have those qualifications. You have enough information to gauge whether or not that customer would be a good person to interview. And you're doing it pretty quickly. So that'd be a piece of advice there. Did that answer the question, Jesse? Okay, I'm looking at Azib's question. It's a long question, Azib. So are you asking about making a bad first impression on a user and then wanting to go back and ask them the same questions? Okay. That's okay. And I think this goes back to setting expectations early on. I would say, I mean, it depends on the strategy. You might want to pretend that you're a full company doing research, but a lot of times I just like being humble and saying, hey, I'm a problem solver looking to solve a problem. And if there's enough of it, I might start a company from it, and just set the expectation that you're going to mess up and that you're in this problem solving and problem understanding phase. That way, when you go back to the person, it's just another iteration and take on your problem or solution, not necessarily a mistake or a failed product. Does that answer the question? Okay, Colin, so you don't mind paid ads. That's good. Yes. When you go into a Reddit thread, you're going to be putting out, or into Discord or something, you're throwing out something like, hey, like, here's a great thing for this problem that you might be having, to qualify the person that's going to click on that link. So you're going to have to be salesy a little bit at some point here. And in my experience using Reddit, Discord, Facebook, etc., it's taken a long time for people to respond, and they're in a different mindset at that point. They're like socializing, and they're not ready to buy. And unfortunately, social media has put us in a position where we're doing both. We're ready to buy and we're socializing. And that's what makes it such a great platform for us. I think you should take advantage of that. This is a unique moment in history. I think Facebook and Instagram, or all of the social media networks, whether they're owned by Meta or not, are going to crack down on this testing process. So using social media to test an empty company it's great. And it's an advantage that we have as modern entrepreneurs. Felicia, as a founder, how do you decide when to make a big pivot with your product versus moving forward with mediocre results? I feel this so much, Felicia. This is the hardest part about entrepreneurship. If you can get good at this, you'll be a successful entrepreneur. Not to say that you aren't already. But I think that first-time founders need to get good at this. And this is why I started Further Faster, was so that I could get better at iterating and knowing when to get off the pot, so to speak. This is a numbers game and an emotional game. I think, and this will, I think this will be the last question, but a really good one. If you're a founder and you're going out and you want to change the world, you're probably one of the most important people that exists in the world, right? There's so many problems, only so many people want to solve them, and only so many people can. So you're the top 1% of humanity, right? In my mind. The worst thing that we could do for ourselves is burn out and get discouraged. So if you're working on a product and you're feeling discouraged repetitively, month over month, and you don't have a partner there or someone to kind of amp you up or get you back on track, maybe you do have a partner and you're both really feeling depleted. Listen to that, because that's all you have is the fire inside of you. And if you discourage yourself early on in your entrepreneurial journey, you're limiting the amount of amazing things you can bring into the world over the long term. So if you're feeling this way now, I think it might be time to consider this. And I'm happy to get on the phone and talk more about the company or this decision point in more specifics. But for all the other founders out there, recognize the emotional tax that it's taking on you, and don't dismiss that, because it's the thing that keeps you moving for the rest of your career, hopefully solving more problems and changing the world for the better. I hope that was helpful, Felicia. And I'm excited to talk more with some of you in the coming weeks. And I hope this was helpful for everyone. I know it was a quick hour, but this is everything I've learned almost about product market fit in a really concise presentation. I'll be sending this out maybe along with the recording in the next day or so, tomorrow before the weekend. And I'm looking forward to getting in touch with folks soon. Thank you all.